All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a concept that, honestly, it might completely flip how you look at problems, both the massive ones and the tiny everyday ones. And what's super cool here is we're diving into this through the lens of a totally normal conversation between a mom and her 12-year-old daughter. It's wild how this simple chat brilliantly unlocks the whole secret to true root cause problem solving. So let's get right into deciphering the indicators of distress.
So let's set the stage with a quick story from our source material. Picture this. Roshni, she's a 12-year-old girl, and she's opening up to her mom. She is just incredibly stressed out because the new class monitor is constantly writing her name on the board for talking. And of course, the plot thickens, right? Because Roshni and this boy have a bitter, ongoing rivalry dating all the way back to a fight they had 3 grades ago. Because, middle school vendettas, they run deep. Roshni is absolutely convinced he's taking his old grudge out on her now that he has a tiny shred of power. But the real source of her anxiety? The upcoming parent-teacher meeting, the dreaded PTM. She is just absolutely terrified of being labeled as indisciplined in front of her mom.
Which brings us to our first main point, the signs of stress.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Mama actually figured out Roshni was dealing with some serious school stress before Roshni even breathed the word about the monitor or the PTM. So how'd she do it? Well, by paying close attention to a very specific sequence of behavioral changes. Step 1, she noticed Roshni just wasn't eating her food properly. Step 2, she was noticeably gloomy, just kind of down in the dumps. And step 3, she was getting upset way more quickly than usual, basically a super short fuse. Mama actually tells her, that was enough to tell me things are not well with you. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that these 3 behaviors, they're just surface-level symptoms. They aren't the actual problem. They're the mask hiding a much deeper underlying issue. Mama was literally just reading the data her environment was feeding her.
And that leads us right into reading the indications.
So Mama initially gives Roshni some pretty standard practical advice about this boy. Just talk to the class teacher, explain the situation, and let the teacher handle the classroom drama. Really solid advice. But Roshni's focus kind of shifts gears here. She's totally fascinated by the fact that her mom figured out she was upset in the first place, literally just by watching her eat and observing her mood. She marvels at what a clever way that is to figure someone out. And this leads Roshni to ask a truly profound question. Are there indications to everything? Man, what a question, right? With that single thought, she takes us straight out of personal emotional psychology and drops us right into a much broader systems thinking perspective. Is the world constantly leaving us breadcrumbs signaling when things are out of whack?
Well, Mama's answer is a resounding yes. There are indications to everything. We just have to know how to spot them and understand what they mean. An indication is really just a sign that something is not in order. And here's the real kicker. It requires the actual underlying reason to be figured out and eliminated. This is a massive, massive shift in how we process the world. We can't just passively float through and experience things. We have to critically interpret the environment around us to find the real meaning. Think of an indication as an alarm bell going off.
To explain this, we get into what I like to call the mosquito metaphor.
To really drive this concept home, Mama brings a lesson right to their own front door. She points out a very sudden, highly visible shift happening in their own community. Out of nowhere, people are putting up mosquito nets everywhere. Roshni immediately clicks with the significance of this. She points out that for the past 5 years, there was absolutely zero need for mosquito nets in their neighborhood. So, why the sudden change? This is a beautiful illustration of how a sudden shift in your environment is a massive red flag. If something was perfectly fine for 5 years and suddenly isn't, you aren't just dealing with some random, isolated occurrence. You have a newly introduced variable. You've got a loud and clear indication.
The whole point here is that the presence of a mosquito shows that something is definitively not in order. They aren't just this annoying little nuisance that we should just shrug and learn to live with. No, they're a direct, glaring indicator that the local municipality has an underlying systemic problem that needs to be fixed. The real reason has to be figured out and completely eliminated, exactly in the same way Roshni's root cause of stress had to be exposed.
Which naturally brings us to the difference between fixes versus resolutions.
So Roshni hypothesizes, maybe the city's mosquito fogging just isn't working anymore. But Mama drops another truth bomb. She points out that fogging is literally just a fix. It's a quick reactionary band-aid. It totally fails to resolve the real issues. A true resolution, that goes way, way deeper. It alters the environment so the problem cannot sustain itself. Actually, scratch that. It's more like redesigning the environment entirely. Roshni actually remembers this resort she visited that claimed to be a 100% mosquito-free zone. And how did they do it? Well, they definitely didn't do it by pumping a ton of chemicals into the air every night. They controlled it through brilliant environmental design, planting the right kind of flora and ensuring that absolutely zero stagnant water existed anywhere on the property. Now that is a true resolution. It alters the underlying conditions so the symptom, the mosquito, can't even exist in the first place.
And that requires finding the root cause.
Because if the mosquitoes are just the symptom, what's the actual disease spreading in their neighborhood? Roshni asks her mom what she thinks the real reason is, and notice how we are now zooming all the way out from a middle school classroom dispute to examine actual, systemic infrastructure failures happening in their municipality. It's all connected, and Mama nails it. The root causes are totally systemic. We're talking bad maintenance in the nearby lake, poor sanitary conditions, and sewage water that's just stagnating rather than actually flowing properly through the drains. Mama notes that these are known issues. The municipality literally just needs to get its act together. Do you see the parallel here? Rajni not eating her food? That was the mosquito. The class monitor writing her name on the board? That was the stagnant water. In both of these cases, the visible distress was merely a signpost pointing to a much deeper, structural failure that desperately needed addressing.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with the final thought. What are the mosquitoes in your own life indicating right now? Because let's be honest, we all have them. Maybe it's a persistent headache you can't shake, a sudden weird drop in your team's productivity at work, or just a general feeling of gloominess, exactly like Roshni experienced. Are you just putting up mosquito nets? Are you just fogging the room and hoping for the best? Or are you actively looking for the stagnant water? I challenge you today to look way past your own superficial symptoms, whether they're personal, professional, or environmental, and do the hard work of finally eliminating those root causes once and for all. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and hey, keep deciphering those indicators.